Hello. Hello, Liz.
Hi, Liz.
Camera shy.
Huh,
Liz, are you there?
there she is.
Hey. Hi, Liz. How are you? Oh, Liz is one of our Canadian Workplace Wellbeing Award winners.
Oh, wow. Are you having
Yes.
difficulty hearing us? I think she
Liz,
says
can you hear
yeah.
us? Maybe she can't hear us yet.
Yeah, maybe.
She pointed to her ears.
Now I can hear you. I have
There we
Hey.
go.
a new laptop, so I'm just
Oh.
setting everything again.
How are you? How are you doing? How was your holiday?
That's good. We were in Calgary for 2 weeks, so it was lovely. We had snow and lots of winter activities, so it was fun. How about everybody
Oh,
else?
nice. Nice.
It was great.
We're in Minneapolis and we're a little low on snow. So we have just a dusting left,
Wow.
but it has gotten cold. So Fahrenheit, we're in single digits.
Ah,
Wow.
okay. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, I would say it's kind of cold here, but it's not too bad actually in Toronto. It's not bad for winter time. There's no snow on the ground, but it is cold out. It is. Okay, well, welcome. I guess we've got Liz here in our session today. So why don't we get started? I've already started recording for everybody. So why don't we get started? So hello, I'm Louisa Jewell. I'm the president of, and wait, let me start that again. Hello, everyone. I'm Louisa Jewell. I'm the president of the Canadian Positive Psychology Association. And I'm really thrilled to have Pete Berridge and Kristen L. here with me today to talk about the Shift Positive feedback process. Pete, am I getting that right?
Yep. Chip positive 360.
Okay, Shift Positive 360. Okay, let me start it again so that we can record this properly, but you can cut that out. So, hello everyone, Louisa Jewell here. I'm the president of the Canadian Positive Psychology Association, and I'm just thrilled to have Pete Berridge and Kristen L. here with me today to talk about the Shift Positive 360 certification that we are doing in February with the CPPA. So, welcome, Pete and Kristen.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here, Louisa.
Glad to be here.
And we've got Liz joining us here today as well, live in our session today. So Liz and anyone who is listening here today we're going to take you through, answer some questions that typically come up for people who are interested in the certification. I wanted to start off by saying a few words about the certification and why the Canadian Positive Psychology Association is bringing the Shift Positive 360 certification here to our practitioners here in Canada. And so Pete and I know each other from the MAP program, the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania. We were not in the same class, but we are alumni, and that's how I met Pete. And I heard about this innovative way of doing feedback, of giving 360 feedback. And a lot of my colleagues and friends are certified in the Shift Positive 360 pro, process. And what they do is they use it as a coach and they use it with their particular clients. And so I was curious about it and reached out to a few of them, and they said that they really loved it. They said that it gives them more tools in their toolkit to be able to be of greater service to clients. They also find that their clients, the leaders and teams that hire them as coaches, also are very interested in hiring them to come and do the 360 process that they learned. And a few of them also said that because the process itself is highly valued, they paid off their certification with one coaching gig that they got. So it can be a very lucrative new service that you can add to your coaching regime. And then there are other organizations, leaders, and teams who are interested in doing the certification because they want to know a different way of giving performance feedback, one that is solution focused. And we do know from the literature that typical performance review processes really don't improve performance. And I was really fascinated when I looked at the research, decades of research to show that there's very little performance review. There are very few performance review processes that actually improve performance. And some of them actually even worsen performance, if that's a word. And so when I heard about Pete's performance review process, I was really interested and I read his book as well, and realized that it was really based in solution focus, which is very aligned with the positive psychology approach. So I'm going to turn it over to Pete to give us more information about what is this about, and see if he can answer some of those typical questions that he gets about the process itself. So Pete, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Louisa. So yeah, I grew up in the field of human resources, did that for about 20 years. And so was one of those folks, like many of your audience members, who developed different sorts of tools for developing leaders, helping them to learn, to grow, to be their best selves. And I came across research as well, meta-analysis by Nowak and Mashishi, that pointed out that almost 40% of feedback interventions actually result in poor performance, not better. And so, having gone through the MAP program, I started to really dig into what is it that we can bring from the field of positive psychology that maybe can be a better solution for that. And you mentioned one around solution-focused inquiry, so which comes out of the area of brief therapy, but the idea of we don't really care about what a person is doing poorly, but rather, what is it that you want instead? What would they be doing? And that's steeped in the research by Tony Grant, who looked at solution-focused coaching methods and problem-focused coaching methods. And there's a dramatic difference in the outcomes between the two. So that's one of the concepts from positive psychology that I thought might be helpful. And also then borrowing from David Cooperrider, who had taught us about appreciative inquiry. And how is it that you can look at when has the problem not been a problem? When have you been successful? And then if you go forward into the future and think about what it would be like if the two of you were even more successful in the future, what would that be like? What would you see? So it's creating that future orientation, and it's really helping to focus on the relationship. And then, of course, borrowing from Robert Biswas-Diener and others around strengths and the research around strengths and how important it is to really understand what our strengths are. And then even research from Marcus Buckingham and articles that he's written around really giving feedback on people's weaknesses actually is not beneficial whatsoever. We need to notice when they're actually doing things well and to reinforce that, to encourage that to happen even more frequently. And then we've got positive deviance research. And so when is the problem not a problem, and digging into that. We borrow from Kim Cameron's work out of the University of Michigan, the Ross School of Business, the energy of a leader and how that energy affects the people around them. And in fact, he talks about one of the things that's kind of surprising is not just that the energy of a leader impacts the performance of their team, but their creativity and even their well-being, their physical health. So stitching that all together then into a different sort of narrative 360. So as coaches, we're often doing 360s as we begin an engagement to try to understand what are these perceptions of our client by the people around them. And we traditionally do that in a way that is not very effective in terms of we do it confidentially, and because we think that we need to allow them to say what needs to be said or to protect that individual. When if we take a step further and we actually try to understand, well, why would you want it to be confidential? And the reason why people want it to be confidential is because of our negativity bias, because of how our brain has developed. And we quickly see what's not working in others. And so that's what we want to share. We want to share things like they would stop doing this, they wouldn't do that, they'd quit doing that, and that can be hard. And so rather than keeping it confidential, what we do is we actually teach people how to be solution oriented and not take notes on what's broken, but instead really prime those people who are giving feedback to think about, what would you want? What would you see? When is the problem not a problem? And that's a really interesting question, because generally the person you're interviewing doesn't know the answer to that until they figure out the answer to that. So by stitching these things together, we started to experiment. And this was back around 2011 when I finished up at the MAT program. And I started to use that. And a really interesting thing started to happen. I started to get more clients. And those clients in my coaching program were people, not that I was out there trying to solicit, but they were individuals who I'd interviewed as part of somebody else's 360. And at the conclusion of that interview, they would say, well, how did she get this? How do I get something like this? I've never had something like this before. So these positive psychology concepts were really important. But what we found was even more powerful was this idea of allyship. So generally, people give feedback, and when they're done, they think they're done. Our approach is very different. Our approach comes with the understanding that feedback is relative and relational to the person providing it. It's not truth. It's just that perception of what they would like from that leader in order to be more effective together. So we can't expect that person to change unless those allies are part of the change. So every person that's interviewed isn't just offering their perspective, they're actually nudged to identify specifically what they'll do to support that leader in a very overt way, in a non-confidential way, to be able to say, yep, these are the things that would help me to be more effective with you. This is what I'd love to see from you. And this is how I'd be willing to help you with that, if that's of interest to you. And what we found is that that's even more powerful when put on top of these positive psychology concepts. So I'll pause there because I've covered a lot of ground.
No, and I think that's really important that, and you talk about this in the book too, this idea of allyship and how people can take responsibility more for the relationships that they're creating rather than just giving feedback in a vacuum or that's unrelated, that people are not quite sure what the context is. I love the idea of a more collaborative approach to how do we improve performance in general together. And how I interact with you would be different than how I interact with somebody else. So if I've got key people on the team as part of the 360 process, then it would be good to know what the context is for the feedback and how I do it differently depending on who it is that I'm working with.
Yeah, you've probably had this experience where I had this a lot as a coach using other 360 feedback tools, where the first reaction of the individual when they get their report and they look through it is, who said this? I want to understand who said this. And that goes to that point you make about context, because context matters. The board is looking for something different from the CEO than their direct reports do. And each one of those direct reports has a different style, a different way in which they can work most effectively with that person. And so if we pair that with solution orientation, here's what would be more effective in working with me, what I'd love to see from you, and so forth, or when we've been really effective together in the past, it doesn't need to be confidential. And you can add that context back in then. You can leave the person's name next to their comments. And in fact, at the conclusion of the interviews, often we hear is, I'm happy that this is not confidential, because you've really helped me to clarify what it is that's going to help me to work more effectively with that person.
Yeah. And I do also think it's really important to talk about the desired behavior that you're looking for, because oftentimes feedback is given to you that's really irrelevant to what I need to do next to improve my performance.
Mhm.
So, sometimes just saying what's wrong doesn't tell me what the solution is or how I fix it or not necessarily how I fix it, but what are the behaviors that I need to move towards to be more effective?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It leaves people wondering when you give them feedback on they would be a better communicator, or they would have more executive presence, or they would be more nimble. That doesn't
Right.
mean anything. You need to, one of the other key concepts is getting from general concepts like that, competencies and so forth, down to specific behaviors. Because even communication is going to be different in what one person is looking for from that individual to another person.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I just have a few questions here. So, do
Yeah.
you have an example of the kind of feedback you've received from clients about this approach to 360s? And do you have a favorite quote from a delighted customer?
He told me you would ask me that, and so I actually have four.
Okay.
So this one just happened Monday. This was really cool because Monday, and Kristen, you probably saw this. I shared this with you. There was an email that came to me, and in it, it said, "One of my team members borrowed your book from me and gave it back today. Thought you'd like to see how many mindful notes were taken. Happy New Year. Hope you're well." And they attached a picture of the book, and it had all of these sticky notes in it. And so it just made my day. So I asked permission and went out to LinkedIn and I posted it out there. So you can see this book that somebody read. So, and in fact, here's the book. We haven't even mentioned it yet, but Feedback Reimagined is the name of the book. And that captures all of the concepts and so forth. And then here was a comment from a president at a med device company. He said, I went to West Point. He was the president of this particular business unit. He said, I went to West Point. I've had at least 6 coaches, 10 plus assessments. I've never seen this. It's embarrassing for the world that this is the first we've seen of this. This is profound. Is that idea of it being transparent, of everybody knowing what every person needs from every other person on his leadership team, was transformative for them. And to be able to do that in a supportive, solution-oriented way was really powerful. Or from Sean Acor and Michelle Geelan. Michelle was in my MAP class and is Sean's wife. They said positive feedback loops are crucial for creating virtuous cycles. Anyone interested in becoming better and bringing out the best in others, start here. Feedback Reimagined is a well-researched and practical guide for putting humans back into the equation for happiness and success. So that meant a lot to me because I admire them both greatly.
That's
And then there was one coach who recently went through the certification, and she said, I could not go back to a traditional 360 now if you paid me.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
So
and
it's
it's
fun.
true. I would imagine, Pete, that this creates more psychological safety, does it not, in the organization when people are transparent like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to be able to set that groundwork. People want to be transparent. They just don't know how, because that's not how our brain developed. They want to be able to say what needs to be said. And when you
Yeah.
teach them through the interview itself how to say it in a constructive way, it
Yeah.
not only transforms that relationship, but they start using it in their everyday life. They use it with their kids, they use it with their partners. They start
Yeah.
thinking about, well, what do I want? Because that's not our natural inclination. Instead, it's to see what might be a threat or something that is challenging to us.
Yeah.
So it's that little added part. And that's what I really like about the approach, is that it actually teaches the participants constructive dialogue skills by simply being interviewed. So you're not just impacting the client, you're impacting every person that you interview. And that's how you change a culture, by interviewing those individuals. And through the process, they learn to reframe themselves to what's constructive. They learn the importance of them offering to help. They learn the importance of looking for the strengths and looking for the specific things that are going to be the behaviors that are going to make them more effective together. So that's why I say it's really fun to be able to do something like that for the client, but for the organization culture too.
That's really profound. So it's not only about a difference in terms of how you approach it and the results you're getting and the lens with which you're looking at the performance of the person, but it's also transforming the organization through the process.
Mhm.
That's really brilliant. Now, okay, so now let's talk about, you've always got the naysayers that are, if we're always giving, because, positive, shift positive 360, are we only giving positive feedback? What would you say to the naysayers? And maybe we can clarify
Yeah.
a little bit more about, it's not always positive, is it? But
No,
maybe,
that's actually a really good point because the name is a bit of a misnomer by itself, being called the Shift Positive 360. And because it's not just positive feedback, it can be very difficult feedback. So we talk about it more as constructive feedback. It's not negative feedback. It's not positive feedback. It's constructive feedback. It's strengths-based feedback and solution-oriented feedback, solution-focused feedback, and being steeped in that research around solution-focused coaching. You can say very hard things, very difficult things in an effective way when you help
Okay.
people get to the point of what is it that you do want. And so that's a process that you help each interviewee through, because sometimes they'll have that misnomer as well. I was doing an interview for executive director of a nonprofit. I was interviewing the board chair, and he was saying, this needs to be fixed. This is broken, and so forth. And I said, I get that, but what is it that you want instead? What would it be? And finally, he interrupted me and he said, you need to know this is the best year that we've probably ever had, yet almost everybody on the board was ready to quit. It's like, okay, that sounds hard. And one of the skills I had to learn was to acknowledge pain. And then to be able to say, that sounds really hard. What would a better year look like? And once we were able to go through that, then he was able to start talking about what he wanted to see from that CEO, how he would be presenting issues at the right level for the board's consideration, how he would be keeping them informed and
Yeah.
out of the minutia and so forth. So you'll often get really difficult feedback, and you'll also get the appreciation of helping a person through that process to get to what they want rather than what they don't. So in order to get good at this, it's not just that you're learning about questions, you actually shift yourself. As experienced coaches, we've got some really embedded skills, and those get challenged when you're going through this certification. And you learn a lot of key skills of moving from problems to solutions, from concepts to behaviors, from past focus to future, from reframing of problems to constructive solutions, and so forth. And kind of dropping some of the assumptions that we've developed over time around the importance of confidentiality, and that, hey, you need to be able to say what needs to be said and things like that. Yeah.
Now, Pete, can you describe for us then, say for example, we've hired a shift positive coach to come out and say you're doing a performance review on me. What can an employee expect from that process? Can you kind of give us an idea so we are familiar?
Yeah. Yeah. So I wouldn't call it a performance review. That has a pretty specific connotation here in the States of, hey, how did you do in your job over this last year? This is more about developmental feedback. And so let's say that, yeah, somebody in your organization, you saw that they really were important to your organization. You wanted to invest in them. You wanted them to be successful, and you thought that they had a lot to contribute. And so you wanted to ready them for that next step. So you bring in Kristen, you bring in myself as a coach. And what we're going to do then is sit down with that individual and say, okay, so who's important to your success, and for whom are you important to their success? Who are critical people that you would like to see as part of your development? And make sure that you're selecting people that are crucial to your development, even if you have a difficult relationship. Because I'm going to work on your behalf to nudge that relationship to become more constructive and that person to become an ally of yours. So we aren't cherry picking people who are going to say good things about you. We want people that are essential, and especially those where they're essential, but you have a difficult relationship. Then
Okay.
what's going to happen is that we're going to get approval on those individuals. And then I'm going to be interviewing those individuals along with yourself, with that leader. And as starting to interview those individuals beforehand, we have to give them information. We have to let them know how this approach is different, that that it's not confidential, that we're going to be solution oriented, that we're going to be asking about strengths, and that we're going to be asking them to become an ally and to support that leader, to become an active participant in that leader's development. Then we're going to conduct the interviews. And the interviews are 13 questions. And the interesting thing is that the beginning questions aren't about the client at all or that leader at all. They're about the person you're interviewing. And they get thrown by that. They're like, why are you asking me about me? And it's like, because we often think we know what our job is, but we don't know what others around us are trying to achieve and why we're important to their success. So we're going to ask them about their background, even their personal background, what might be beneficial to that relationship, and what their goals are, what they're trying to achieve. And then we put them into the future as if those goals have already been achieved. What did you do to bring that about? What do you need to stay focused on in your development that's going to help that to happen? And now, what do you need from the leader? What would they do that helps you get to where you want to go? So we create this mutual relationship up front, and also priming them with positive emotions by talking about themselves, to be able to think more broadly and to take in more information, to be more creative. Then we start asking them about that leader, and we say, what is it that you love about them? Their greatest strengths. And then people expect us to ask about weaknesses or what's broken, but we don't. We never ask about weaknesses. Instead, this is where we have them do the hard work of overcoming their negativity bias by asking them, and if they're even stronger in the future, more effective, what would that look like? What would they be doing then? And that's what I mentioned earlier. They oftentimes don't know the answer to, because they critically see through their own negativity bias, well, they'd fix this, stop that, wouldn't do this, and so forth. And we go, okay, we're not taking notes. We say, and what would they do instead? What would you see? When have they done it well? And we get it into these specific behavioral content. We say, now, what's the small step that they would take to move in that direction that you would notice? And we get down to that very specific kind of behavioral step. We ask about their team and how their team can grow as a group. And then we use a little appreciative inquiry, and we positive deviance to ask when they've been most effective in the past. And then we get into actually the person being interviewed, their strengths, what they're really great at, because we want to weave that into the allyship. And then we have them create this future picture of their relationship together. If the two of you are even more effective in the future, what would we see? If I were a fly on the wall watching you, what would I see that would be better, different in your dynamics? And then we say, now, what is one thing you're willing to do to bring that to fruition, to make that happen? What is your commitment to their development? We ask, we have an interesting question in there about energy, the energy of that leader. And then a couple of traditional questions. And then we ask them, and how is this for you? And any final comments? And they usually say, oh, wow, this is thorough. And then we wait for a little bit, doing that coaching silence. And they go, I just want them to know that I want to help and I believe in them. And you get these beautiful little gems, or they could be in my job someday, or I could see them in this role someday. Then we say, how was the interview for you? And they go, this was great. This was different. Sometimes, how do I get one of these? And then when we're interviewing that person, we ask them, the leader, we ask them a different question, which is about their motivation. What's going to sustain you through the challenges of growth that you can come back to? And oftentimes that's much deeper than, I want to be good at what I do. I want to contribute, blah, blah, blah. Usually it has something to do with them personally, where they struggle, and what's going to hold them, keep them coming back and working on those new behaviors. But the greatest thing that they get after that, so anyway, we conduct these interviews. It has everybody's name next to the interviews. It's not confidential, but that report only goes to the coach, and that report goes to the leader. It doesn't go to HR. It doesn't go to anybody else. Nobody has to worry about who's going to see this. It's only going to be seen by that client and their coach. And then we do a very deep dive through that report. That can take 3-4 hours to go through together. And I'm coaching that person through it to identify what's important to them so that they are the ones owning their plan. They are the ones deciding, out of all this stuff, here's where I want to focus. Here's what my strengths are that I'll leverage in that. Here are the people and what they said they'd do to support me in that. And that kicks off the next phase, which is the coaching and ongoing relationship between that leader and their allies. The allies aren't done after the interview. They become an active participant going forward. And then usually 4 to 6 months later, we come back and we resurvey those allies and we ask them then, what progress have you seen? What evidence have you seen of that? What have they done? What would you encourage them to continue to do? And even more importantly, how did you help? Did you do what you committed to doing? How did you do it? What did you do? And what are you willing to do going forward? And then finally, an ROI. What impact have you seen on the organization? How would you measure that? So that you can prove that impact as a coach and for that leader that it's having on the business. So it's not just the ShiftPositive 360, but it's a progress survey as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
very
then
powerful.
that's what that leader is going to come back and talk to people about, is their development plan. That's what they are going to share openly with others and have those conversations. Say, here's what I decided to focus on. You said you'd help me with this. Let's talk about that. Maybe we want to massage that a little bit, change that a little bit. But it's that ongoing support that our research shows has a tremendous impact.
Now I can see how a coach then becomes really an integral player in the organization and how they can really have an impact with so many people with this process. So it's a great way to embed your services yourself as a coach
Yeah.
to really add a lot of value. Now, at this point, I just want to open it up to Liz. Liz, if you have any questions, I'd love to be able to, if you want to just unmute yourself, if you do have a question right now, or if you don't, that's fine too.
I do, thanks. Pete, I'm really interested in this. As I was a psychologist in the UK, so a lot of this is something I used as a behavioral cognitive psychologist, is starting with, especially with working with, people under 19, very much a focus on what are the behaviors that we want to see, as opposed what is it we don't want to see. And so I completely agree and understand the impact and value of this. And the reason I'm so interested in it is because I do believe there's a direct impact on business results. I think coaching this way, managing performance this way, providing feedback this way will have a direct impact on business results. And I just wondered if you had some very specific examples of that. I'm in the process right now, actually, of setting up a coaching practice within the organization of internal coaches.
Oh, nice.
And I just started the process of, the team reviewing our 360 and our performance management approach. And our approach is very much 50% on the what you achieve and 50% on the how. So the how and those behaviors are super important. But yeah, any specifics on business results, companies that you've?
Well, I think you're actually kind of a setup for us, because we just had a statistician from Claremont University that took a look at our data. So I mentioned the ShiftPositive 360 as well as the progress survey. And so we sent them all the data that we've collected in the progress surveys. And we just got the results back in the end of November, beginning of December. And in that, there were 94 leaders with more than 500 raters, evaluators of how did you do on your goals? Did you move your goals forward? And so this was kind of similar to what Marshall Goldsmith did in his article, Leadership is a Contact Sport. And so there was a -3 to +3 in terms of the ratings of those individuals in the development toward their professional development goals. Now, we mentioned earlier that almost a third of feedback interventions result in poor performance
Mhm.
in relationships. In this case, every one of the 94 leaders showed significant increase in their performance toward their development goals.
Mhm.
And it was significant. So on a -3 to +3 scale, it came out plus 1.6. And with that, there were a number of things that were really found to be even more impactful. The first was the transparency, moving away from anonymous feedback. And
Mhm.
so if an individual did not share their goals with the others, the allies around them, if they didn't come back and say, this is what I decided to work on,
Mhm.
then they came out 16% less improvement than average.
Mm.
And with each level of increase in goal sharing, so from I never shared them to rarely shared them, sometimes shared them, often shared them, it went up 11.6% more. So the more the leader shares their goals, the more other people see changes in that leader.
Mhm.
Second thing was the specific support conversations. If they followed up with those individuals and said, you said you would help me in this way, you do this one thing to support me, let's talk about that. Those individuals that did that had a 19.2% greater improvement as in the perception of them toward their goals. And then the most impactful was actually this allyship. So when the allies actually followed through on what they committed to doing, it went up 9.2% improvement for every one of those steps, from infrequently help them out, occasionally help them out, frequently did what I said that I would do to support them, or very frequently did the one thing that I said that I would do to support them.
Mhm.
So we were like blown away by that, because Marshall Goldsmith did a really nice job of showing that sharing your goals is important. This takes it to a whole nother level of pointing out why that allyship is so crucial, which requires that it not be confidential, that we get the context of it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, what we haven't been able to do is a consolidation of the ROI parts of that, because it's very individualized. We've got a lot of anecdotal sort of stuff about, because they delegated more, because they trained me in the sales skills, because they handed off these key clients, we see this much of an increase in our business,
Mhm.
or because they are talking more in this way, our engagement scores have gone up. That's the kind of stuff that you get. There's a little table at the end of each one of those reports where it's like, what's the area and how would you quantify that?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Can,
Is
can
that
I,
helpful?
yes, that is. And yeah, I was thinking, that the concept of selective perception plays into all of this, right? If you point out what it is the person's going to do, people see it. Um,
Yeah.
but I was also wondering, why a certification? Why
Mm.
not just communicate this knowledge and skill as a course? Why a certification?
Yeah. So here's the crucial part of it. What we find is that I kind of said it in the earlier a little bit quickly, is it's not about the questions. It's about the change you go through so that you're comfortable in those uncomfortable situations, to be able to help a person when they say, just tell them to stop doing this,
Mm.
or don't put my name next to it.
Mhm.
It takes a shift. And that's what the participants would say, is they change through the process. Now, what we are doing to what I hear in your question is, how do you scale this? How do you get it out into the world more? If
Mhm.
this is a better way, how do you put it out?
Mhm.
And that's what we try to do through our manager training that we do. So this isn't the only thing that's part of Change Positive, our company. We have manager training, we do team facilitation, but also just in December, we rolled out SP360 AI.
Mhm.
So it can be difficult to afford to bring in a coach to do 1 hour interviews for 6, 8, 10 people around a leader, to do 3 hours of debrief and so forth. That can be what you mentioned, Louisa. A coach is likely going to make back the cost of the enrollment in the very first one that they do. But not all organizations can afford that. Independent schools, nonprofits, and so forth. And the coach gets to set their price, whatever they want to charge for it, they can charge. What they're paying us for is the access to our platform that supports doing that Shift Positive 360. And so what we've done, though, to help with that is we launched SP360 AI. And with that one, we've trained artificial intelligence agent to coach through the interview the same way in which our certified individuals would do. And that's actually available publicly. So an individual can go through, it's on our website, you can go through, and there is a training associated with it. That training is free. And then after you go through that training, which is about an hour, hour and a half, and it teaches you about the core concepts and it teaches you about using the platform, then that individual can become a program manager, and they actually even get one free use of the platform. And they then can act as program manager. So as a coach or an internal individual, you can then assign those uses to individuals, and you can help them through the process, identifying their allies, that sort of thing. But basically the platform, they send out the invitations directly. Those individuals go into the interview, and the interview is actually conducted by the AI agent, and it's actually voice-to-voice technology. So they simply have a conversation. It asks them, tell me about your background. Tell me about your goals and what you're trying to achieve. Tell me about, and then the strengths and so forth. And they can respond verbally, and then they summarize, they click summarize the answer. They go in and edit the answer. They then confirm that answer, and they move on to the next one. So that is brand new. That's just been rolled out. And then finally, I would say that anybody can buy the book. Those concepts are in there. They can go and create their own methodology. But one of the advantages of getting certified is, a couple of them are this. I mentioned, and I'll do a little share screen. Is that working? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is what our platform is. We have a technology platform that supports the coach or the internal individual, where you can then keep track of each of your clients, and it actually helps you with the interview itself. So here's, if I were John Stewart's coach, I can go in there, and it's going to help me to set up John's allies. So I can add, I've got Stephen Colbert in there and Bill Berditzman in there and so forth, all of the information. It's got templates for the communication, because what's really important is it's very different than what people have experienced before. So we want to communicate to the client how it's different, the client to the allies how it's different, and us to the allies how it's different. So they get those key messages about solution orientation, not confidential, allyship, all those kinds of things multiple times. Then when you're actually conducting the interview and you set up the interview itself, then it takes you through the setup itself. And so you're prepping them again. It takes you through each one of the questions, and you can use voice to text transcription if you like. So that's built into the platform. And then what it does after concluding that interview is that then the report is automatically updated and generated after each person is interviewed. So you don't have to worry about a big fat Word document and where am I at this and so forth. And then it also, I have to kind of go back a step here. Let's see. It also then takes you through the process of the debrief, the development plan. We've got templates for that development plan, as I mentioned earlier, as well as then coming back later and doing the progress survey, so that you can see how has that person done over time. So each use of this platform is $395. And it doesn't matter how many allies are interviewed around the leader, it's just per leader that you've got. And that then allows you to keep everything consolidated there, and it gets rid of a lot of the administrative work, because you can take your link, if you use Calendly or Acuity for your schedule, and you can put that into the email so that people can schedule themselves, and you can see who's scheduled, who hasn't scheduled, all that kind of stuff, so that you're not maintaining it on a spreadsheet somewhere or something like that. So that's maybe another bit of answer. And then the other thing I would add to it, the why to get certified, is because some of those other things that I mentioned, the ShiftPosit 360 AI platform is available to you at half price. So you can purchase uses of that platform for your clients at half price of the public retail model. And then we have a second level of certification as well, which is called ShiftPosit Live. where you can actually, it's a facilitation method using the similar concepts, but facilitating a group of people to give feedback for a leader. And we teach people how to facilitate those sessions.
So they, if I'm hearing this correctly, if I'm certified, I get access to that platform, Pete, for all of my clients?
Yeah. Yep,
Okay.
that comes with it. Yeah, that's one of the things that we tend to forget to mention is we have a whole technology platform behind this that's going to help you to conduct your narrative 360s and the Shift Positive 360. Yeah.
Well, that's hugely helpful, especially with if you have clients like John Stewart,
Oh, yeah. John doesn't know it, but yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't know that people are
Yeah, he's
giving.
got Chris Kringle in there and a number of others too. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I imagine Chris Kringle gets a lot of positive feedback.
He does. He does. He's just spreading joy throughout the land. Yeah.
Liz, do you have any other questions? Does that answer your questions?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, good, good.
I'm curious, was it convincing at all as to why to go through the certification?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can definitely see the impact and the need for it. Yeah, I just I have to do some more thinking about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting process. And so if I'm a coach wanting to do this, other than the fact that I now have a new service offering, I have access to the portal. Are there any other benefits that I might gain by doing the certification?
One that pops to mind right away is just the community itself. I mean, this isn't a certification where you're just like done. I mean, I'm certified in a lot of things, Myers-Briggs and principles and leadership circle profile and all those kinds of things, right? But this is a community of people. We get together every other month and we learn from each other and we continue to evolve the systems. And so, for example, like the SP360 AI, that came about because our community was saying, this is great, but I work a lot with nonprofits, or this is great, but I work a lot with independent schools. What can we do there? And we have people learning from each other. How do you sell it? How do you talk about it? And getting to know each other so that they can work together. That's one of them that comes to mind really quickly, is just the beauty of the community itself and staying engaged. We've got about 250 people that have been certified, a number of Mapsters, a number of individuals through the Hudson Institute, a number from Center for Coaching and Organizations, and just a lot of others. And we're seeing a lot more internal to organizations too, where it's leadership development professionals that are working on how do we develop this next level of leader in the organization, and looking for those resources. And then we talked about how it tends to grow your business. But I think really the core is it gives you a way to put positive psychology practices into the real world and bring better relationships about in those organizations, and to help our clients to flourish because they feel supported. It's not just us as a coach. They have other people there vested in their development.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that gave us a really good idea of what the certification is all about. Pete, if people have more questions, how can they reach you?
Yeah. So should we put the link in the chat there and maybe show that for registration for Toronto? And so Kristen's put that in there. Is
And
that, and do you have the one for, oh yeah, if you go there, it actually takes you to the Toronto, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so
yes, the registration on Toronto, and it also lists other future offerings as well, but Toronto will be the first one that pulls up.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And what we'll do is we'll also add those links out to accompany this webinar recording as well, so people have that.
I
Yeah.
think one of the things that you should mention though, Louisa, is, this is an opportunity to support the CPPA as well. So I was really happy that you approached us and said, we'd like to do a fundraiser. Would you bring this? And I think it's delightful that we can do this together. And
Right.
it sounds like a wonderful facility that we're going to be at, and it's going to be really enjoyable. We'll have a nice social time on the Wednesday evening on the 5th of February. And so that's provided where you'll get to meet the people. We actually do some pre-work beforehand. So individuals that sign up will have a partner that they won't even know yet, that they're going to be learning about before they even show up. And when they do get together, it's really fun to see how they have kind of fallen in love with each other, hearing these great things about their partner, and they haven't even met them yet. And so we do the social on Wednesday, and then we've got 2 full days on Thursday and Friday. And we look really forward to getting to know the people in your community.
And yes, so we're going to be at the University of Toronto. So it is right downtown. So it is easily accessible via TTC. There's also parking available there as well. And of course, we are going to do some breakfast and lunches as well. So at CPPA, one of our values is hospitality. So we like to feed people well. I think that comes from my Sicilian background as well. We like to feed people well and make sure that they're taken care of. And the last time we did a session at the University of Toronto there, I think people walked away and said it was the community. It was the fact that they had other like-minded people that had gone through the same thing that they could count on for information to answer questions. And I think that's what's so powerful about bringing people together to do these certifications as well and do learning together, is because then they have actual people that they've met that they feel comfortable with to ask questions, to say, I tried this, didn't really work. What do you think? Or yes, this worked. What could be better? And that's really helpful as you're starting something new as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
well, thank you so much, Pete and Kristen. Thank you so much for being here and for giving us more information. So we're going to send the recording out. Liz, thank you so much for
thank you,
being
Liz.
here and asking some questions as well. And we look forward to having people from our community attend in February, and we look forward to seeing you then.
Thank
Sounds
you.
great. Thank you,
Okay,
Liz.
thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Louisa.
Goodbye.
Thank you.